Hi, good morning, everyone. My name is Mr. Garcia. I'm a teacher at Garfield High School. I'm here to try to preserve our history. Garfield High School in East Los Angeles has a very rich history, and no doubt David Sanchez and the Brown Berets are part of that history. Today, we are here to learn more about David Sanchez and his experience with the East Los Angeles Walkouts of 1968. Thank you so much for this opportunity, Mr. Sanchez. A few questions for you. Okay, so the first question, around what percent of the film do you think it's accurate, and what percent of the film you think it's drama? And can you help us understand a little bit more about what was true, what was not true?
Well, I would say that maybe 75% of the film was true. The rest was Hollywood glitter and stories to make some kind of transition work for the movie. It worked very well. The movie did not telegraph what it was going to say. It gave everybody a chance to develop their own opinion in regards to why students walked out at that time.
Do you have a specific example of something that was not accurate in the film?
Well, I think there are a lot of things that were inaccurate. For example, a lot of people do not realize that the reason why the walkouts were successful is because the Brown Berets, we had 15, mostly our younger brothers and sisters, we had 15 Brown Berets who were attending those schools that walked out. And that's why we were able to be so effective, because we had family and friends and we were actually attending the school. And then we had another 15 Brown Berets who were going out there to make it happen, to blow out the schools or to get the schools to walk out. It wasn't easy. It was very difficult, especially at the first school, which was Garfield High School. Uh, but anyway, we were able to get everybody to come out and join us to convey a message. And I think the message was that we wanted better schools and better food. We wanted Chicano teachers and Chicano administrators, and we wanted to open the view, the Chicano view, and understand Chicano history.
Beautiful. Going back on that, how did you begin to get involved with activism, with fighting for justice and wanting to improve the conditions in your community? You were very young when you started, but what encouraged you? What motivated you to do that?
Well, I think just being a victim of poverty. When I say a victim of poverty, is growing up in South Central and East Los Angeles, seeing so many people go die. I think by the time I was 21 years old, there was like 20 people who had died, young people who died from car accidents, from drugs, and violence in different situations. And it was like, well, something is wrong. What is causing the oppression? And we came to the conclusion the thing that was causing the genocide, the homicide, the suicide, the thing that was causing all these problems in our community was poverty, and also the other thing that was causing it was the schools, because the schools was the only device in our community to educate the people, so we could survive. But the schools were not doing that. The schools were not doing their job, and so it was important to implement Chicano studies, for example, to give students pride in their identity, to make them strong, and that's what we wanted to occur.
Uh, you graduated from Garfield High School?
No, I went to Roosevelt.
Roosevelt.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Matter of fact, I just graduated about just 1 year after I had graduated. Uh, the walkouts occurred, and so it was. We still had I still had my friends and my ties in the high schools already, and most of the Brown Berets had brothers and sisters in the high school, so that is one of the reasons why it happened. The other reason why it happened, because we were the only organization that was organized, the only body that was organized in East Los Angeles. So we had the ability to do such an instrument of change, and that was the walkouts. And the Brown Berets were not given all the credit that they should have been given, but that's another story.
Mhm. Yeah. So when you were going to Roosevelt, do you remember any form of discrimination or racism that you and other students faced during that time?
Well, not just Roosevelt, but also in middle schools. I mean, they were real strict on us when they shouldn't have been so strict on us in a lot of measures. I remember when I was in middle school, they would paddle the students all the time. Even in high school, they would paddle you if you talked or chewed gum. They would just give you all kinds of swats, and they're just swatting you every time you turn around the corner, especially in middle school. They in middle school they swat you for not bringing in your PTA money. So they were just using that as a means of discipline when actually they should have just taught students what discipline is about. Nonetheless, we felt that the schools needed changes. We did. A lot of people don't know about that. We did a survey when I was just in high school, and we did a survey to students to find out what the students needed and what the students wanted. And we discovered that most of the students had some of the same needs, and that was they wanted to have more pride in their education and be motivated more by the history of the people. See, because when you take away the identity of the people, it's like terrorism in the heart of people. And so we're saying, we don't, we want to return the identity and to return the insight and to return the history so that people can be proud of themselves and use that as a projection to go on to the future successfully.
Were your parents supportive of your activism?
Very much. My parents had been in around the community quite a bit, a number of years. My dad and my uncles and everybody who were in the Zusu riots and stuff like that, they all called themselves Chicanos, and so that was their identity. And if you look at that identity, also the police were harassing my family. We had a nightclub that my uncles and my dad worked at, and it was closed down by the LAPD. So already my family had a sore eye for the police because they were so cold to us and they closed down the family business. But not just that, but the teachers were very cold. The teachers did not recognize us. In many cases, they still do not recognize us because they don't know our history. And it's very important that we teach history. And for example, in teacher education in the colleges and universities, they don't really teach Chicano studies. They try to ignore it, and they try to promote just white history and ignore brown history. And so that's why it was important to have impact. And the reason why we developed the Brown Beret was to have impact because it was the way to go. It was the Brown Beret was actually a symbol or a psychological ploy to bring attention to the problems of the Mexican American community. And so that's when that's kind of the idea of the Brown Berets was really projected as to become more known and develop a better reputation across the country. When people heard about Brown Berets, right away people knew that it was Chicano movement and that it was time for a movement.
Yeah, you keep saying the word Chicano, and in the film we see the word Chicano, and oftentimes the students are conflicted about whether they are Mexican American or Chicano or Latino. What is Chicano for you? How do you define that ideology?
Well, I think it's a defining history. Even Ruben Salazar talked about the word Chicano. Ruben Salazar said, Washington, D.C. wants to hear from Chicano power. So the Chicano is a very powerful word because it gives us power. It gives us a note that we do exist. The word actually comes from the Mexicano tribe, which is the largest tribe in Mexico. For example, the Aztecas were the Mexicanos. So the word actually has a tribal significance. And it's also the word Chicano is also Aboriginal, stating that we are natives of this land.
Beautiful. And also, I think I heard that Chicano is a person who's proud of their heritage.
There you go.
Willing to fight for their people, right? To uplift the next generation of of Latinos in the U.S. or Mexican Americans in the U.S. Would you agree with that?
Oh yeah, we're right now we're focusing on film and developing Chicano actors to take on the film industry. And so it's really important that our word get out to the movie industry and also to the television, boxes in every home. Unfortunately, when you look at the television box in every home, it's all mostly pink faces. You don't see no Chicanos on TV. You don't see no Chicanos in the movies. And I think that's what was good about the movie Walkout was that there was all Chicano cast. And I think that was a great thing. And also it told a story, told our story. And Ruben Salazar, for example, he was very much into telling our story. Unfortunately, he was killed on Woody Boulevard by the sheriff. And a lot of people say that he was killed on purpose, but basically he did tell our story. And to lose him is to lose our story being told because he was the only reporter that talked about Chicanos.
Yes, of course, the Ruben Salazar was murdered in 1970, and the walkouts was 1968. Was Ruben Salazar involved somehow in the Easterly walkouts, or we
No,
just move
no,
out?
no. He wasn't around. He didn't come. He was in Vietnam during that time. He was a reporter in Vietnam, and I talked to him about that, and he told me that. Well, and he told me that Vietnam was more dangerous than East LA, and I told him no. I said you got it wrong. I said it's dangerous right here, and unfortunately, he kind of a couple hours after I talked to him, we talked about the danger. He was killed by the sheriff.
Okay. Were the students aware, like, looking at the movie Walkout, you guys make reference to Cesar Chavez and the United Front Workers, Che Guevara and the movement for liberation in Latin America, and Gandhi in India, etc. Uh, were you guys connected, aware with all these events happening all over the world in the 60s, like with the Cold War and the Guerra Sucias in Latin America? Uh, and I know that 60s were crazy because you had, all this, the civil rights movement, you had the protests against the war in Vietnam, you had multiple assassinations, like, of course, MLK, Malcolm X, JFK, Che
Bobby
Guevara,
Kennedy.
Bobby Kennedy. So it was a very busy decade. Um,
Definitely, it was the whole world was in a social revolution. I wouldn't say a violent revolution, but I would say more of a social communicative revolution.
did that have an impact on you, on your ideology?
No, not at all. I grew up in the barrio, and I think one of my first lessons in the barrio was to try to control the barrio so that to stop the violence. And so when I was like 14, I became like vice president of the Primera Flats group, and that gave me the opportunity to learn leadership at 14. But also because I was working with a Catholic youth organization, that gave me the situation to be able to create. We made dances, right? So we can go to different bodies without having any conflicts. But anyway, that was my first experience working with young people, and I think that when I say value, I say the main struggle was primarily the struggle in our backyard, not so much the struggle in Central America, or the struggle in Mexico, or the struggle in South America. Our struggle was in the Southwest, and a lot of people don't know about the history of the Southwest. But realizing that, for example, the Chicano or the Mexican American is the only group of people that have a contract with the United States government, and that's called the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo. And in that contract, it says that we have rights, we're guaranteed traditional rights. That means the right to be cruising in cars. That's a traditional right. But also, if you look at things, the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo, which was a treaty to bring peace to end the Mexican American War, it was not a conditional surrender. It wasn't rather it was not a unconditional surrender. It was a conditional surrender. Conditions. United States didn't want to fight Mexicans no more, so they gave Mexican Americans a break by treaty to recognize our traditions, but also the islands off the coast of California were not recognized as part of the United States. One of the reasons is because the islands, for example, Catalina Island, is in international waters, so it really doesn't belong to the United States according to the treaty. So who does it belong to? I say the island belongs to the Chicanos, the Mexican Americans, and we have begun purposely. The schools are incoherent. I mean, 50% of the students in the state of California, I'm talking about like 5 million Mexican American students in the state of California, and the schools are incoherent and do not recognize the Mexican American history nor the Mexican American peoples. So how can a teacher go into a classroom and not recognize who the people are? And they don't recognize the students as being Mexican American because they don't want to. And so therefore, a lot of students are kind of lost. And part of that loss is in identity. And when you take someone's identity away, they take on multiple identities. Some people want to be Michael Jackson, some people want to be this and that, and, but not Chicano, or they want to be Dodger fans or whatever, but they don't want to be Chicano. And that was done on purpose to assimilate students and to assimilate the people, so they do not be strong, so they do not remain weak. For example, I was just looking at that today. I mean, where's our Chicano representatives? I mean, there's so many of us, but we don't have any Chicano representatives. And so that's why it's so important to also bring up youth to become our representatives in government.
Definitely. That leads me to the next. Let's go back to the walkouts and then we go to the
Sure.
Chicano pipeline, because I think you mentioned a very important point there. In regards to the walkouts, how did you first hear about this student movement to protect students from this discrimination from the LA City schools? When was the first time?
Well, we were the students, in the LA city school system, or just graduating from high school. So we were still had our foot in the door. I think primarily Richard Autori, he was just head of a program called Community Services for LA County. And he set up a program for youth to come together at the Boys and Girls Club to develop leadership skills. Anyway, out of that group, we started a group called the Young Chicanos for Community Action. And from that group, we got the idea of working with the student movement, and also to do surveys in the schools, see what students wanted, and also eventually to do action because of, and to make demands. And we call that jiu-jitsu politics, where you make a demand, and if your demand is not heard, well, you demonstrate. In regards to the LA Unified School District Board, at the time we made demands upon the board. They didn't recognize it. We told them, you don't recognize our demands, we're going to walk out the schools. And we did. We did walk out of the schools. And there was, out of the 13 people that were arrested for disrupting the schools, 9 of them were Brown Berets. So that just gives you an example. The people who were arrested were more involved than anybody.
So in the movie, Paula Crisostomo, she's the one that comes up with a survey. So that part is not accurate in the film?
No, it wasn't her. It was Young Citizens for Community Action. She was a member of the Young Citizens for Community Action, but they needed somebody to carry the script. Mm-hmm. She was not even Chicano. She was Filipino, and although she's always been around the community pretty much, but I would say there was other people that were more involved with the student movement than her, and I think that's one of the things that she wasn't a high roller in the Chicano movement.
Who was more involved from that you can remember? Like, who was a student leader, for example, at Roosevelt, at Garfield, at Wilson, etc.?
Well, the ones we recognized were they were Brown Beret students. They were Brown Berets, but they're students. For example, we had Javier Montes at Garfield. Roosevelt, we had my sister and her friends, Arlene Sanchez and Hilda and a bunch of other her friends. And then at Lincoln, we had Alex, can't remember his last name. He was there also. And so we had a lot of students who were in the schools already. So I think the Brown Beret students were never recognized hardly. And so that's why we try to look at it.
Why did you think that there's that like pushing around, with the Brown Berets, like not giving you guys the credit that you deserve for this?
Well, you have to understand that there are a lot of people who are anti-Brown Beret. Brown Beret is an empowerment organization, civil and cultural rights organization to empower the people. And people are afraid of that. People don't want to see Brown Berets or or Chicano activists in politics. Also because of the agendas, there's so many other people have different agendas. Our agenda was for progress and reform. And then there was other people who had an agenda they just wanted a revolution. But we knew that was not, feasible. Uh, and then other people wanted violence, and Brown Berets have always been against violence because the Brown Berets have never been arrested using a firearm. Although we have been arrested many times for demonstrations, peaceful demonstrations. So there are a lot of people that wanted to take the movement down a different road. And we're saying, no, the road that we have to take is our backyard. We have to organize our backyard. And the Brown Berets went across the country, organizing walkouts throughout the countries. Maybe about 2 or 3 years after the walkouts, the Brown Berets organized walkouts all across the Southwest and the Midwest. So it was very important that we continue to work. We continue to use those strategies.
What do you remember about your relationship with Sal Castro? Was he the only teacher trying to help the students, or was he like a one-man show with the high school teachers? Because in the movie you only see him, right? He's only Mr. Castro, and the administrators and the teachers are kind of walking away from him. What do you?
Well, Castro was he was for the community. I mean, even when I was in high school, he got me a job working with the playground. Besides being a teacher, he was a director of a playground in an elementary school, Magnolia Elementary School on the west side. And so he got me a job there. I got to meet him at a conference, at a MAPA conference, and right away we started touching bases. And so he was very much involved, but he didn't know the walkouts were going to come and go down like that. Nobody knew nobody knew that the walkouts were going down. Only ones that really knew were the Brown Berets, because we weren't going to wait. See, everybody wants to do the walkouts in June, and so the Brown Berets said, "No, we're going to do it now. It's hot now. The issue is hot now. Let's walk out now." And so when we did that, we went to Garfield High School. In 2 hours, it was international news all over the world. That students had walked out. That there was a student revolution or social revolution, and it was not that easy. There was a lot of conflicts with the police when we did walk out at Garfield.
Yeah, you mentioned the police. I know that in the movie Walkout, there's a specific date where there's violence against the students.
Definitely.
To Sal Castro is that dirty little secret of LAUSD schools, that they allowed the police to go into the school, especially Roosevelt, to use violence against the students. What do you remember about that, and what was your reaction?
Well, I was in the middle of all of it, and that's one thing that you'll find, that wherever there's movement, I'm always there in the history book, because somebody's got to carry the vanguard. And then plus I was the prime minister of the Brown Berets, so I had to be there. Wherever there was action, I had to be there. That was my role as the leader of the Brown Berets. I think the violence came about is because the police were so coming in to beat up students, and so the students fought back. Not just students, people fought back, but people in the audio that were there, they started fighting with the police also. And so a lot of people got arrested. A lot of students got arrested, but it was because they were simply because they were just walking out of school. They were practicing their rights, their constitutional rights. As a matter of fact, the Chicano 13 who were arrested, they were mostly adults. They won the case on constitutional rights, that we did have the right to protest. We did have the right to practice our civil rights. And so they dropped all the charges. But they tried to give us 64 years in prison for walking the schools out. And they got us on a grand jury indictment, which means 12 gabachos or 12 gringos get together and sit around a table and decide who's going to go to jail, right? So that's what they did to us. But it was that Robert Avina, that the one that in the film, Robert Avina, who's the police infiltrator. He's the one that took all the information to the grand jury indictment, and they decided who was going to go to jail. And all three that went to jail were all guys. There were no women. They were all guys, because he was watching us. He was collecting information.
Robert Avila.
Yeah.
And
no, Avina.
Avina.
Yeah.
Avina. Okay. Yeah. Okay. So how did you? So you didn't know that he was undercover until the indictments, or?
Well, I had my suspicions. I mean, I was talking to him one day at the Piranha Coffee House. We had a coffee house right there on Olympic Goodrich. Now it's called Tomato's Restaurant, but that was our Brown Beret Coffee House.
Uh-huh.
I asked him, I says, how do I know you're really a student? Because he told me he was a student at Wilson High School. I says, I don't know. I said, you look like a cop to me. I told him, He goes, no, I'm not a cop. And he showed me a report card from Wilson High School, with his name on it and classes on it and everything. He showed me his report card and I looked at it. And I said, oh, well, I guess he must be a student, right? So, but later on we found out, we did an investigation and we ran a credit check and we found out he was getting his money from the LAPD.
And what was your reaction to that? How did you confront that with him?
No, we just told him, we know you're working for the police department. You must leave. You must now leave. And so he left. But then he came back in court to testify against us a couple months later.
Oh, mhm. So that whole story with Paula was just drama.
Oh yeah, yeah.
So you guys found out before the walkouts that he was undercover?
Well, yeah, no, we didn't really know that he was undercover because sometimes he would smoke marijuana. And so we figured, oh, he's okay. He's smoking. he's not a cop. He's smoking marijuana. But actually, he was a cop all the time.
So you found out before or after the walkouts?
After the walkout, that's when our suspicions rise up. When we realized that we had been infiltrated and we realized that we were being arrested. They came to our homes and looking for us.
So when you were arrested, how did your family react to that? And how many days were you arrested?
We were all in jail for about three days. And well, my particular case, I was at the Brown Beret office over on Soto Street, Soto and Cedar Chavez. And we had a big office there. And then all of a sudden I looked out the front door, as a glass door in the front, it's an office building. And I see all these cops running to the front door with suits on, And I'm going, there's something's up, This don't look too good, people running to the front door with suits on. I says, oh. And then I knew, I says, it's a raid. So I jumped out the back window in the office and I ran. And they finally this little short black detective pulls a gun on me and says, you're not going nowhere. I told him I can't get arrested. I said, I have to go to a prom at Lincoln tonight. he says, yeah, at Lincoln, yeah. I said, I gotta go to prom, I gotta go to prom. He says, sorry. He says, you're not going nowhere. You're going to jail. And anyway, I had my tuxedo in the car, in the trunk and ready to go. And so anyway, they took all of us to jail, including Moctezuma Esparza and Sal Castro and everybody.
And who got you guys out of jail? Was it the Buffalo?
Well, it was the Brown Buffalo. Oscar Acosta was one of the attorneys, but we had like four attorneys. They all were good attorneys. Oscar Acosta argued in court that the indictment was unconstitutional because there was no Chicanos on the grand jury, and those are the ones that locked us up. The other cases, the other lawyers argued our civil rights. We were in the right, and they were able to win the case.
So you were released 3 days after.
3 days. We're in jail 3 days. No, 2 years. Took 2 years to drop the charge. We were in court for 2 years.
Wow.
So that's where it goes there.
Wow, amazing. Going back to the walkouts of '68, do you think that you were successful in meeting those demands? Like the movement was successful in changing?
Very successful because not just the demands, but also when Sal Castro got arrested, the schools, he was fired from the LA Unified School District. And so that created another big response from the community. And once again, another demands were made again to make a clarification. And so, of course, the schools were excited about what was going on. They were scared, excited, and they realized that they had to make a move because we would continue to walk up. Matter of fact, that was 1968. A lot of people don't know it, but in 1969, there was another walkout at Roosevelt High School in which 40 students were arrested. So people were pushing the demands. But having the Brown Berets there available gave this, they gave the demands support. And we were a pressure group. You know, we always have been a pressure group for our civil rights. So we were there available.
Um, what advice do you have for students who want to improve the conditions in their school? Because right now, we still have many of those same conditions. There's more funding, of course. We have more college access, more classes that are available for students, AP courses, etc. But there's still some students still feel that there's not enough ethnic studies and Mexican American studies in our schools, and so and the restrooms are not clean all the time and not open all the time for students. So there's still some of those conditions that you guys were asking for. Um, what advice do you have for students who want to improve their schools today?
Well, they need to organize a committee or an organization. Met is the one kind of organization that does help in many cases. But the people have to get organized. It's too hard to try to be a leader by yourself. And that's what the Brown Berets. The Brown Berets are a group where you're not alone. You're fighting with a group of people with you. You're not alone, and that's why the Brown Berets have been very successful. But I think also the identity is very important to understand that the Chicano identity, because that is our central strength. Back in the days, uh, unity came about primarily because the glue of unity was the Chicano identity. So the Chicano identity is most important. And we're across the country, we're also approaching Chicano studies departments. We're not focusing on Chicano identity. Uh, because if people don't know who they are, they take on multiple personalities sometimes. So that's why it's so important to continue especially with the new generations coming up. The most powerful generation is usually the third generation. So there are more Chicanos now actually today than there was back then. You know, but we were more organized back then. That's the only difference. And the reason why we're better organized because we went to conferences. We learned how to unite. We learned to not be talking bad about each other. We learned carnalismo, brotherhood and sisterhood. Uh, we had an ideology, which was unity first, but that unity has been lost down the road, and it needs to come back. Unity needs to come back.
I agree. Uh, Finally, pretend that you're in front of the auditorium of Garfield High School with 1,300 students, 70 teachers. You have a microphone, and you have a few words for this generation, this new generation of Garfield High School students or Roosevelt students, I mean, East Los Angeles students, Boyle High students. What would you tell them?
Well, I would tell them that they need to get involved because if they do not, things will be even worse for them, for their generation. I think we knew that. We had to get involved. We knew that if we did not get involved back then, there would be no jobs. There would be no educational opportunities. There would be no scholarships. There would be no doors opening for us. So we knew that in order to open the door, we had to fight for our rights. And I would say that even today, we must fight even harder because one thing, automation is taking a lot of jobs away. And a lot of Chicanos are getting their degrees, but the opportunities are not there because they're underpaying a lot of the Chicanos. A lot of Chicanos are not getting paid what they should be getting paid. I've even heard some college graduates, university graduates, have gotten jobs as file clerks for the city of Los Angeles because the city of Los Angeles doesn't want to give them a better position. And so, once again, we're underpaid, we're unrepresented, and we need to be represented. And we need people. We need somebody to fight for us. We need someone out there who is willing to fight for the people. And without it, things can get worse. Without it, the conditions and the jobs could get worse in the future. And so that's why it's so important that people organize for their future, for their community as a group.
And who can do that today, do you think?
Well, we got, right now, we got the Brown Berets, the National Party. We're about the only organization in East Los Angeles. And we're also training actors to go into the Hollywood industry. So that's another fight that we need to win. Or we need to win back that box, that TV box that's in every house. We need to win part of that share. So far, we've been pushed out of that share. Also, we need our fair share in the colleges and universities. So often, many colleges and universities act like academic dictatorships where they don't recognize us. They don't recognize our history. And so how can we understand what's going on with our life if they don't share or appreciate our history? And so that's another thing. Understand also because of the psychology to make a people strong, they have to have a strong psychology. Chicano psychology is one of the strongest, and it gives us a foundation to stand on. Without Chicano psychology or without foundation and identity, people are weak. It's like a tree. A tree is strong when it has roots, and we have roots. We should be proud of our roots. And our roots, if there's a very strong wind that comes by, or oppression or poverty comes by, we can still stand because we have roots, and we should be proud of our roots.
Yes. If students want to learn more about the Brown Berets, where should they go? What website or where should they get more information?
We have I can't remember the name of our website. It's called. So you got me right there. But I think they can just go to my website. It's David Sanchez. It's a black and white picture. This is David Sanchez, and they can go through there and find out more information.
Good. Well, thank you so much, everybody. This is David Sanchez, one of the activists and leaders of the East Los Angeles Walkouts in 1968. Thank you for sharing with our students.
Oh, can I make a mention?
Yes.
Yeah, we have two events coming up. This Saturday, we're going to be training some actors right here in the back of the East LA Library, by the lake, by the benches, by the amphitheater this Saturday at 12 o'clock. If you're interested in going into the movies, we're training some young people to go into the movies, and that meeting will be this Saturday at 12 o'clock. This Saturday, 12 o'clock. At the lake in back of the East LA Library.
Thank you so much, Mr. Sanchez. Appreciate it. Have a beautiful day. See you in class.